All right, from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center, here's one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride-in on this Thursday morning. Couple accidents to report. One at Hardscrabble Road and Clemson Road. Another one at I-20 eastbound at Alpine. I-20 westbound at Sunset. And that looks like all we've got out there on the roadways as of right now. High today is going to be 74 with some wind. Tomorrow, high of 73. 76 on Saturday. Right now, it's windy, about 68 here in downtown Columbia. It's traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on The Game. Nine o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler headed along with you with a perhaps a little bit less jovial Jack Veltri compared to where he was yesterday, as his Yankees did end up getting eliminated last night by Toronto to the tune of a 5-2 victory there in New York. So probably not as excited today as you were yesterday.
Man, I'm I'd like to say I'm sad, but like I'm just kind of used to it at this point with the Yankees. I mean, it's an every October thing, and I'm more apathetic, I think, than anything. I'm just so used to it that it's like it's whatever. We'll same time next year in October. So, I mean, look, I had high hopes for yesterday. Thought they were going to win, but when you don't play great defense and you don't hit when it matters, you're not going to win. So.
It's one of those things, and God, how old were you the last time they won a World Series?
I was 9 years old, and honestly, I vaguely remember it. Like I was old enough to obviously watch it and stuff, but I barely remember it, to be honest. I mean, it's just that long ago.
I feel like you don't have a great grasp on the magnitude of things as a sports fan, really until you can get into your teens. And there are plenty of things that I remember watching sports when I was 7, 8 years old. And again, it was something you did with your dad or your friends or whatever, and it was just fun to watch the games. But I don't think you always understood how important certain moments were or how significant things were until you get a little bit older, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what's at stake here, and this is what this means, and the history and all that kind of stuff. So being 9, watching a World Series win, maybe not quite to that age of appreciation yet.
Yeah, it's funny because every year after that, I remember all the other years of the Yankees getting eliminated. Heck, I remember vividly the next year when they got eliminated by the Rangers in the ALCS. So, look, it's funny how that works. But yeah, so it's tough. You move on, and hopefully there's a lot of important changes made in the offseason because it's what's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over
and over again.
It's at the end of the day, I don't think this is all an Aaron Boone problem. I don't think it's all a Brian Cashman problem. I honestly think it's just a player problem at this point because guys didn't show up besides Aaron Judge, who had a heck of a postseason. So
hey, he still might win MVP, so there's that.
Yeah, I'd be stunned if he didn't win MVP. I mean, Cal Raleigh already had a great year, but come on. It's Judge was doing things that were just insane. But move on, and I got my Islanders hockey sweatshirt on. So
I've already moved on to hockey.
I've already moved on to hockey. I'm ready to go. Islanders play the Penguins tonight, season opener.
You still got the Bills. Bills got
the Bills. Yes.
And as we talked about earlier on this week, the pathway in the playoffs could be devoid of the Ravens and the Chiefs this year.
Exactly.
So it might play perfectly for the Bills this time.
Thank you. The positivity I needed, and then hopefully we'll go to Baton Rouge this weekend, and hopefully South Carolina will give us something awesome to talk about on the way back.
Yeah, and you'll give your prediction today because you won't be here tomorrow because I imagine, you'll be on a flight tomorrow morning, but then you'll spend the majority of the day driving the rest of the way to Baton Rouge, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, flight's going to be early morning one, like around 11, and then get to Mobile, and then we'll drive 3 hours from there, and then we'll eventually be in Baton Rouge tomorrow. So
Say you can listen to Paul Feinbaum on the radio while you're out there. While you're driving.
I could.
Just like everybody in Alabama does.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We got plenty to get into for that South Carolina and LSU game, including the availability report, which we'll dive into in just a moment. But first is 9 o'clock, and we'll listen to our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It's time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9. Speaking of getting hurt, last night we got our first availability report of the week ahead of South Carolina taking on LSU this upcoming weekend, and I wouldn't say there's a lot of surprises on here, but you do have some concerns on the offensive line, certainly. Marky Anderson is ruled as out, and you have doubtfuls for both Nolan Hay and Casey Henry, two guys that were dealing with injuries prior to the bye week a couple of weeks ago. So, again, we talk about the issues you're having on offensive line, and this continues to highlight that you're probably going to be dealing with that going into this weekend and for weeks going forward as well.
You're going to have to kind of just figure out the offensive line and kind of just hope that those guys can get healthy. I mean, Marky Anderson, we knew he was probably going to be out for a little bit here. Obviously, he got pretty banged up in the Kentucky game. He had to be helped off the field twice.
Yeah, it didn't look good.
It did not look good. So I don't know what the specific injury is, but it kind of looked like a leg injury just from the way he didn't really have much weight on one of his legs whenever he was getting helped off the field. So you hope for the best with him. He's a guy that's just had injuries throughout his college career here at South Carolina. So, but the other guys, I mean, Casey Henry, Nolan Hay, you didn't have them for the Kentucky game, but I mean, look, they're what are they? Questionable or doubtful right now?
Yeah, they're doubtful right now.
Yeah.
Which that can improve. We've seen guys that have gone from doubtful to questionable to probable, so it's not impossible, but I think we're all operating under the assumption that you're probably not going to have those guys this weekend. For as rough as things have been on the offensive line, Casey Henry has had a solid season.
Yes.
Like you'd say, he's probably been your best guy overall, and that's a marked improvement from where he was a year ago.
So now it begs the question, well, what does the offensive line look like going into LSU this weekend? I would imagine, so Josiah Thompson going to be at left tackle, right?
No doubt.
Shed Surratt going to be at left guard.
Yep.
Obviously. Center, I would imagine it's probably Rodney Newsome, right?
Yeah, that's what you had last time.
Rodney Newsome there. Right guard, I think you go with Trobaugh. I mean, if you want to have Boaz Stanley rotate in a little bit, by all means, but it's probably Trovon Ball. And then at right tackle, it's Tree Babalade. So, I mean, your offensive line is still in a good place, I think. I think those guys are all capable, but losing Kaysen is definitely not ideal for another week since he, like you said, Tyler, I think he has been your best offensive lineman so far this season. I think the PFF numbers would probably indicate that to some degree. But also, I mean, obviously losing a guy like Nolan Hay, who, you did have starting at center against Missouri. I mean, you were kind of hoping that was the shift you needed. But I think Rodney Newsome has done a good job in stepping up these last few weeks. So, look, it's nothing new. The injuries have been there, and it's next man up at this point. And fortunately, I think they have that continuity of already playing a game together with this new group on the line. So hopefully, this will be Shed Surratt's fifth start at South Carolina. Hopefully, he continues to develop because he's done some good things. But again, you have to be able to open up holes on this offensive line to kind of get the run game going. Because I mean, I'll share more on it later, but I do think the run game is going to probably be one of the main deciding factors in if South Carolina can actually win this game.
Well, and you're going up against the best defense you've played by far this entire season. One that's really good at stifling the run. I was looking at some of the numbers last night. Blake Baker is blitz happy. Blake Baker brings the house constantly against teams. They're really doing it almost half the time when it comes to quarterbacks dropping back. So you're going to have an offensive line that's constantly going to be getting pressure by a very good defensive front. Harold Perkins Jr. is going to come in off that edge, playing that kind of star role and, try and get after Lenore Sellers. So you're going to have to put your best foot forward to try and hold these guys at bay, which is certainly a tall task.
It will be. This will definitely be a really tall task for South Carolina. But at the end of the day, you do have a pretty mobile quarterback who will hopefully use his legs, much like he did against Kentucky. I just think that is what it's going to need to be. Like, again, if LSU is trying to swarm Lenore Sellers and creating pressure, he's got to find the right holes to run through and just take off, break out of tackles, be Superman out there. These are the types of games where you're going into a hostile road environment, backs up against the wall. You need to find a way to win this game somehow. Nobody's giving you a chance. That's when Lenore needs to go out there and be Lenore. And I do feel like South Carolina is getting closer to feeling like that. I asked Mike Shula about that yesterday, and he feels like Lenore is getting close to being that guy as well.
Elsewhere on the injury report, you have in the questionable list of Miles Norwood, Judge Collier, and Troy Pikes. Now, we haven't seen Miles Norwood pop up on this before, so don't know exactly what he's dealing with. But the belief is, because Collier was ready to go this past week against Kentucky. I think he only played maybe a handful of snaps in that game. But he seems to be in a position that he should be good to go for this upcoming weekend based on what we've heard up to this point. And again, that's a big get back for your defense. You've pretty much been without him for the entire season because of how early he went out in the Virginia Tech game, and him playing opposite Cisse. You feel really good about your two respective corner spots at that point in time. So hopefully everything continues on the right track and he'll be ready to go on Saturday.
Hopefully. I mean, that's kind of a interesting situation that I don't know how much. I mean, that would definitely affect South Carolina a lot at the corner position with having those two guys down if they were not able to go. It limits you in a lot of ways, but hopefully they will be able to go because, I mean, you're definitely going to need them out there this weekend.
Yeah, you got a tough group of receivers you're going to have to deal with from LSU, no matter how good or bad, Garrett Nussmeier is playing. And when you look at things on the LSU side of things when it comes to this availability report, one guy listed as doubtful for them is their offensive lineman, Paul Mubenga, which has been their starting left guard for most of the season, been dealing with the high ankle sprain. So we'll see what happens there. One guy that's not on this list, though, is the right tackle, Weston Davis, who's a redshirt freshman who started most of the year, missed the Ole Miss game, dealing with injury, but he's been atrocious. He's been their worst offensive lineman by far. And in that Ole Miss game, they started a true freshman at right tackle in Carius Kern, who actually played pretty well. And I know Brian Kelly said earlier on this week that Davis is going to be getting the start at right tackle, but you got to think he's going to be lining up opposite of Dylan Stewart and having to deal with him. So I do wonder how quickly they might be willing to pull the leash on him if things aren't going well and put that redshirt or put that true freshman in, who obviously played well against Ole Miss a couple weeks ago.
A few other notable injuries here. You got Aaron Anderson, questionable. Caden Durham, probable. So I would imagine those two guys are probably going to play. I mean, we'll see what happens. Still got a few days with the injury report for these guys that are questionable right now to get up to probable. That's typically the stages of how this goes. A few times you'll see guys go from questionable to doubtful, but I think LSU is going to be in pretty good shape. And having Caden Durham back for them specifically is pretty big news since obviously the run game has not been great, and he gives you some support in that way.
Yeah, look, we know what Caden Durham is capable of. He's not getting that help up front when it comes to holes being opened up. He's somebody that's really good at yards after contact and having to make guys miss. And, again, Carolina's had their own struggles with making tackles so far this year. So he's certainly somebody that can give you trouble. But, yeah, I would expect he's going to play this upcoming weekend. And, again, hopefully this is not the game that LSU gets their running game figured out.
Well, I mean, remember last year, LSU couldn't get their run game going at all through the first few games of the season. And then, it so happened they found some semblance of a run game against South Carolina. I think Caden Durham, if I'm remembering correctly, had a pretty decent game that day. So, hopefully you're able to force LSU to rely so heavily on the passing game in this one. And then hopefully you have your cornerbacks available, the ones that are on this injury report right now. Hopefully you get them back. And hopefully that makes a difference because, I mean, look, you're not going to be able to beat LSU if they're getting that run game going. And that just gives LSU so much more freedom to do what they want through the air.
One name that's not on this injury report or availability report, for LSU is, of course, Garrett Nussmeier, their quarterback, who has been dealing with an injury, an oblique strain, for most of this season. What does that mean going into Saturday, and could we see Michael Van Buren, his backup, in 80 Point on Saturday night? We'll dive into that coming up next. Let's hear from Brian Kelly from earlier on this week as well. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on your Thursday on the game.
Well, I mean, I think last year, I saw it all from him. So it's like whatever, nothing has, it's exactly what I expected from him. He's a very accurate quarterback that can escape the pocket. He does a really good job of obviously controlling the offense and really getting them in the right protection, bringing receivers in to block apex players and blitzers and, throwing the ball out to screens and just, trying his best to make sure he's, blitzing. If they see the safety here, they run the run this way or they throw it away. He does a great job of controlling the thing. I think he does a really good job of all that. His accuracy has always been the best thing that I've seen from him.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hour, and Jack Belcher along with you on your Thursday here on the game. That was Gamecock defensive coordinator Clayton White talking to the media yesterday about what he's seen out of Garrett Nussmeier so far this year. And when you look at his numbers, they're not terrible. He's been fine. He's been solid and nothing egregiously bad. But when you compare him to the way that he played a year ago, there's definitely a significant difference in Garrett Nussmeier's game. And obviously we now know he's been dealing with an oblique strain pretty much going back to before the season started. There was that situation in camp where they had him sit out the rest of the day, and it seems like it's something that's kind of persisted since then. You look at his numbers on the season, his high percentage throws are a whole lot higher, so he's throwing a lot closer to the line of scrimmage. His average depth to target is about 2 yards shorter than it was a year ago. He's not throwing down the field as much, and when he is, it's not quite as effective. There's very much a difference in Garrett Nussmeier's game from a year ago compared to now.
Yeah, I agree. There really is a little bit of a difference right now, I would say. He hasn't been bad. I'll say that. He has not been like an awful quarterback. He's still, thrown for a little over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 picks. But you would kind of expect a bit more out of him. But again, the injuries kind of have played a role in that. He's been banged up, it seems like, since the preseason. So for him, I think, we'll see what it looks like for him this weekend. I would fully expect him to be ready to go for Saturday. There's no doubt about it. But you mentioned something interesting earlier. At any point, do we see LSU use Michael Van Buren in this game?
And that's something that I don't feel like we've talked about at all this week. That is certainly an interesting subplot to this game. For those that remember, Michael Van Buren was the starting quarterback for most of the season last year. Mississippi State was backing up Blake Shapen, and when he got hurt, started the rest of the year and had some good moments, had some struggles as well, fumbled the ball a lot, but was somebody that showed a lot of promise, and obviously is now at LSU backing up Garrett Nussmeier. And last week, Nussmeier, to help him heal from his injury, didn't do a whole lot in practice, so Michael Van Buren did get a lot of runs with the ones, last week on their bye. And Brian Kelly, earlier on this week, was asked about, if Michael Van Buren might end up factoring into the game this weekend.
I think, he's beginning to command the offense the way I'd like a starter to command it, not a backup. I thought earlier in the year he commanded the offense like a backup. I want him to go in there and with confidence, with communication, and do that. And I thought he did a very good job when he was given the reins last week. So those are all really positive things because I think we see his skill set. He's got a live arm. He's got some elusiveness. He's got some grittiness to him that you can see in game situations. But we really like Mike. We knew what we were getting in the portal. I think it's just his maturation now as a freshman coming into his own now that he's been in this program. So I thought it was a really good week for him.
So Michael Van Buren is not like this crazy prolific passer. So if he were to play this upcoming weekend, it wouldn't be from the standpoint of, okay, well, we think he gives us a better opportunity through the air than Garrett Nussmeier does, but he does have the ability to run. Now, he's more of a scrambler than a designed runner when you go back and look at his numbers from last year at Mississippi State, but he does provide you more mobility than a Garrett Nussmeier does, and when you don't have really any other running game to speak of, not outside the realm of possibility we could see him in some form this weekend.
It wouldn't shock me at all, especially if he was getting reps with the ones last week during the bye week, and again, that's last week. That's during the bye week. You're letting Nuss kind of get back to being 100% healthy for this week. And look, this is Nuss's start this weekend. There's no doubt about that. But maybe there's some packages. Especially like you said, Tyler, the fact that LSU hasn't gotten much going in the run game. It wouldn't shock me at all if that's the case on Saturday, like if they're just not able to get much going in the run game from their running backs, and we know Nuss is not the most mobile quarterback, maybe they start using a little bit of Michael Van Buren a little bit to get themselves some yardage in the run game in this one.
And reading and kind of listening to some of the people that cover, the LSU Tiger program up close, there is a lot of belief that he's going to be involved in some form or fashion, and not to the standpoint of, hey, if Nussmeier goes out there and struggling in the first 3 drives, they're going to bench him or something like that. But like you said, short yardage, goal line packages, those kind of things. And the moments where you traditionally are saying, okay, we're going to hand it off to our running back, he's going to get us 2 or 3 yards. Well, you're not really good at doing that right now. So at least having Van Buren out there, kind of similar to what we see with, Lenore Sellers in South Carolina's run game, having that threat of somebody else running the ball can potentially open things up for your running back a little bit more with RPOs and stuff like that when, they're having to account for another guy that is mobile as opposed to just being able to key in on the running back. So there is opportunity there. And look, Brian Kelly is, outside of what he said there about, him practicing last week with the ones, he's downplaying his, position of being involved in this game. But that's exactly what you would expect. He's not going to go out there and say, yeah, by the way, Van Buren's going to get some snaps this weekend because guess what? Then Carolina's going to be prepared for it. So you're playing that close to the vest, but I would not be the least bit surprised if we saw him factor in some kind of way, if nothing else, for a handful of snaps on Saturday.
The run games for both of these teams have been honestly just not very good at all this year. LSU ranks 117th in the country in rushing offense. South Carolina, only 2 spots behind them at 119. It's just been real bad for both teams this year. And going back to what I was saying earlier about the run game being so important in this one, I mean, look, whoever wins that battle in this game, if one team is able to really get that going, whether it's through Lenore Sellers for South Carolina or maybe the running backs even have a good game for Carolina, that's going to be so huge in this game. And for LSU, with how banged up Nuss is, I mean, I would expect LSU to try to come out in this game like every team does, come out here really trying to run the football, but I think a little bit more emphasis on it because of, Nussmeier being a bit banged up recently. If you get that going, I mean, that's really going to put a lot of stress on South Carolina's defense to not only have to worry about the run game every now and then, but you're also going to have to deal with the fact of this is still LSU with a passing quarterback and some really talented receivers out there in this offense.
I feel like both coordinators and Joe Sloan and Mike Shula are going to probably obviously try and run the ball, but I also feel like you're going to see a heavy dose of screens and stuff like that. And those kind of short passes that do kind of act as a run game to a degree when you can't really get things going on the ground. So, yeah, both teams, it was really kind of funny how both teams look at each other similarly when it comes to offense because you have 2 quarterbacks that have not played the way that you thought they were going to early on in the season. You don't have a run game. You have troubles on the offensive line. Like Carolina and LSU, I think either you or Wes brought up a point yesterday, are kind of like the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other when it comes to like the inefficiencies they have on offense.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I didn't think about it like that. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be real fascinating to see what South Carolina does to kind of draw it up. I mean, because, again, this stuff, handing it off right up the middle is just not working, obviously. So I think you got to get a little bit more creative. And I wouldn't mind seeing some more screens, some little dump-off passes, because we saw a lot of that, I think, in the Missouri game. And I don't know why Carolina didn't do it more often. I personally would like to see more of those types of plays and also trying to get, the deep ball going a little bit as well.
Plenty more to get to from this game as the morning goes long. But up next, another headline out of Chapel Hill. We'll dive into the latest with Bill Belichick and the sinking ship that is North Carolina football coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Quick reminder, tonight you have Thursday Night Football, which you can listen to here on the game. Tomorrow night, for Friday night, you have the High School Football Scoreboard Show with Elijah Campbell and Justin Hall from 7 until 11, getting you all the great action going on around the Midlands. We'll talk to Justin Hall coming up tomorrow to preview some of those matchups and, of course, everything going on Saturday with the game starting with 2:30 with Gamecocks Game Day and then the 7:45 kick, which you can listen to right here on the game. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on your Thursday here on the game. All right, welcome back in. Next Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Belcher with you here on your Thursday on the game. Your next opportunity to win $1,000 coming up here in about 10 minutes. Our national cash contest. Just be listening out for the keyword and be ready to text it to 95819 for your chance to win $1,000. You know, Jack, I really thought once we got into the season, especially after seeing the way North Carolina was losing games, this would just stop being a story, right? Because how bad they were, it's like, okay, you know, this is a failure, a flop, and, you know, maybe they'll fire Bill Belichick in the offseason or something like that. But I feel like every single day we're getting a new headline out of Chapel Hill, and it's just making the situation look worse and worse, and that obviously means we have to talk about it.
Yeah, so yesterday, I think I sent this over to you. I saw this on Twitter, Ollie Connolly, who...
former scout, former NFL scout.
Former NFL scout, writer at Guardian US. He put out the tweet, per sources, Bill Belichick has discussed buyout options with North Carolina's hierarchy. Belichick has signaled a willingness to trigger his own $1 million buyout if he can find a soft landing with another team or in media. That was at 4:28 p.m.
Yep.
Let's go to the next thing that came out. UNC put out a statement, two quick statements, one from Bubba Cunningham, which says Coach Belichick has the full support of the Department of Athletics and University, and then Belichick says, I'm fully committed to UNC football and the program we're building here. To me, Tyler, and that was On3 put that out at 9:44. I know UNC posted it, but it was around that same time.
Yep.
So in about a 5-hour span, we get Bill Belichick is thinking about leaving and jumping ship, and then UNC's like, wait, no, that's not the case. It sounds like damage control to me.
Did you ever know that couple in high school, or maybe the people that you know that you went to high school with, that, you know, since you've graduated, maybe you see them on Facebook and they're constantly posting about how happy they are together, but at the same time, you know that that's not really true. They're just trying to put on a good facade for everybody else. That's what these statements read to me, right? And this is obviously a direct reaction to the report coming out about Belichick looking for his way out. And yeah, Belichick says, I'm fully committed to UNC football and the program we're building here. Cunningham says Coach Belichick has the full support of the Department of the Athletics and the university. And like, we can see through the BS. We know what's happening here. We can see this ship is sinking and you're trying to save face, and nobody believes these statements. And if anything, it just makes it look worse because you're trying to put a bandage on a gushing wound at this point.
It's just bad. It's you know, it's a sinking ship at this point. Like, there's the hole is in the ship, and there's nothing you can do about stopping it at this point. We know this season is not going to be a good one for UNC. I mean, they got their 2 wins. That's about, I think, as far as maybe they'll steal one later in the year in ACC play, but
I don't even know if I have that much confidence in them. They look terrible.
I mean, they just look flat out uncompetitive. You know, I saw other tweets out there, other reports that there was a fight in the locker room earlier this week. I mean, there's just, it seems like there's so many issues going on right now with UNC, and it's not even just one thing. There's so much going on. And, you know, I think when this hire was first made, you're like, okay, you're bringing in Bill Belichick. He's never coached a college before, but hey, look, he's a winning coach with the Patriots and stuff. It could work out, right? But I mean, there's always been the signs like, hey, like, you know, wow, this would not work.
Apparently, Belichick also went to Cape Cod on their bye week a couple weeks ago. I don't know any coach in college football, especially at the FBS level, if that is true, that is leaving their facility on a bye week. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you might get a little bit of downtime, but you're on the recruiting trail. You're getting set for your next opponent. You're in season. There is no time for vacation in the middle of the season.
No, definitely. I mean, like, you know, for South Carolina, for instance, I mean, the coaches got a day off this past Saturday. So they got to go home, hang out with their families, all that. That's understandable. But, you know, like you said, like, you're out on the road recruiting. Like, South Carolina was out on the road recruiting Thursday and Friday. Shane Beamer was in 6 different states and went to a high school football game. I mean, like, these guys were just all over the road, and you have Bill Belichick here out at Cape Cod. I mean, it's fine if you do it for like a day or two, like, you know, on the weekend when you don't have the game, but you know, you're supposed to be out on the road recruiting and getting your team ready for what's to come, and we'll see how UNC looks coming out of the bye week. But I mean, look, they've just been awful this season.
And again, I've just heard that. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, it kind of just further adds to this.
Would it be
disaster.
shocking?
It wouldn't be shocking at all.
It wouldn't be shocking.
And especially for a guy that's as football serious as Bill Belichick's always been, if he were to do something like that. But again, it just goes back to how much of a mess all this has been. And I think about this from a North Carolina perspective, right? Because things were going the wrong direction with Mack Brown, which is why you fired him, agreed to not have him back, however you want to phrase it, with how things went down last year. And, you know, the natural thought process was like, because here's the thing, Larry Fedora had really driven that program to the ground. They were in a really bad place. And you go out there and you bring back Mack Brown, who had success with you decades and decades ago, to try and get the program back on the right track, right? Build a solid foundation, a solid platform to allow somebody else to build off of, which is why it was so peculiar when they let go of Mack Brown to go out and hire Bill Belichick for what was only going to be a short-term thing anyway. Like, what, he signed a 5-year deal with him, I think?
Yes,
and
5 years.
You know, he was older than Mack Brown was. So you didn't get younger as a head coach, and you're taking a chance on a guy that had never coached at this level before. So now I think about it, you basically wasted an entire year. You've set your program back God knows how many years with the way that this is operated and done. So let's say Belichick does leave, works this buyout and goes and becomes on a desk somewhere, which I don't think he'd be very good at that anyway. He's not a talkative person. But let's just say he's not back in North Carolina next year. Now you're having to go out there and hire somebody else and basically having to start over from scratch, where you've essentially wasted so much time
and
these
money.
past 2 years, and money, tons of money, with what you see in the resources they poured in for this upcoming year, to just be that much further behind. I can't imagine how far this has set this program back now.
I can't either. And look, the buyout is not all that much. $1 million is...
That's chump change.
Yes.
They can get that quick.
They can get that quick. It'd be one thing if they had to pay, the buyout was $10 million. That would be a different story. But it's only $1 million. I just feel like that is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card of, hey, let's pull the plug after this season and move on. Now, my thought with this is, and the biggest question I have for the offseason, if and when Bill Belichick is gone after this year, what does the hiring process look like? Obviously, for one, they're going to hire somebody younger. You can't get much older than Mack Brown and Bill Belichick.
No.
But, do you have to is there going to be interest in this job? Number one, is anyone really going to want to be a part of what's, I think, is going to be a rebuild? I mean, think about, whatever recruits Bill brought in, I mean, they're all going to decommit and no longer be a part of the program. It's going to be a mass exodus, probably. Well, so and I think you probably lean towards Tyler, and tell me if you agree or disagree, bringing in probably like a young, I don't even know if up and coming is the right way, but like somebody that doesn't have a ton of experience. I feel like that's probably going to have to be the route they go down, unless they just have someone in mind that could fill the shoes.
Well, and it also doesn't help that, and again, this is assuming that Belichick is not coming back for 2026, you're going to be looking for a coach in the same cycle that Arkansas is open, that UCLA is open, and that Florida is open. 3 high-profile jobs.
Well, Florida's not open.
Well, not yet. Florida. We think Florida's going to be open, assuming that's going to happen. If your predictions do come true from your hot takes for a couple weeks ago, you can assume Florida is probably going to be open as well if things continue with the way they think they are down there in Gainesville. So you're talking about 3 jobs within the 2 power conferences. They're going to attract the best candidates. I don't even know.
And Oklahoma State, too.
And Oklahoma State, which, that's a little bit of a step down considering it's not in the SEC or the Big Ten. You also have another ACC job in Virginia Tech Open. So, I mean, I think you're looking at this job, assuming you're talking about these other 5 being open, that it might be the worst job of the bunch. Maybe Virginia Tech's worse. I don't know. But it's certainly not the most desirable destination for any head coach to want to go to.
No, it's not. I mean, you have to play massive cleanup duty with this. I mean, it's going to be ugly, and then I just don't see the benefit in UNC hanging on to Bill and just letting this thing ride out. I mean, if you have the opportunity to move on from him after this year, which they do because of that buyout, might as well go for it.
So this saga is going to continue, and I'm sure there'll be another headline sometime today that we'll have to talk about tomorrow because that's kind of how things have been so far this week out of Chapel Hill. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. What's the latest with the Major League Baseball postseason? We'll hit that up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyrod and Jack Belcher wrapping up hour number 1 here on your Thursday on the game. And as mentioned at the top of the show, there is one divisional series that has come to an end last night as the Yankees fall to the Blue Jays 5-2 out there in the Bronx. And what was game number 4? Toronto wins the series 3-1. So we still got 3 other series going on, though, as the Tigers are able to even the series with the Mariners, 2 apiece now. You had the Cubs pick up the victory to keep themselves alive yesterday afternoon over the Brewers. And last night, the Phillies also picking up a victory to keep themselves alive to avoid getting swept by the Dodgers out there in L.A.
Phillies really needed that last night. I mean, it's been a rough go this postseason, obviously losing the first 2 games of the NLDS at home at Citizens Bank Park. That is a rough look, but the one guy they needed to find a way to get going, I mean, I'll go through the lineup in a second here, but Kyle Schwarber was awesome last night. 2 home runs. Did you see the first home run he hit last night?
I think it's still flying through the air.
Monster shot. So Trey Turner, 3 for 5 last night, 2 RBIs. Schwarber, as I mentioned, 2 for 4, 3 RBIs. Bryce Harper, 2 for 4, and then Alec Boehm, 2 for 3. And JT Real Muto hit a home run too, went 2 for 5. That's the main production of your order right there. Anytime you can get that, you're going to win by a lot, and obviously that's what we saw last night.
Elsewhere, again, mentioned the Cubs picking up a much-needed victory in their series over the Brewers yesterday, 4-3, and they obviously came out of the gates red hot and were able to score those runs early on and really kept the Brewers at bay offensively, and that's something that had happened in the first couple games. The Brewers just jumped out to very quick leads. 6 in the first inning in that first game. They matched the Cubs 3 runs in the first inning in that third game. So when the Cubs get out to that early lead, you think of, okay, are the Brewers going to be able to match that? And they did end up making it a 1-score game, but the Cubs did enough to hold them at bay there and be able to pick up again the much-needed victory to extend the series going into today.
Really good start to this game, and well, not in the top of the first because there was a pop-up. And, Wrigley, it was like a 5 o'clock start. You have the shadows are everywhere.
Yep.
Pop-up gets dropped or just falls in the infield, and then a run eventually does score. But the Cubs get 4 runs in the 4 runs in the bottom of the first there and responded. That's all you needed, and then you get you end up holding on to win 4-3. So, I mean, the Cubs are still alive, and, we'll see what happens today with the Brewers. Neither team has named a starting pitcher for tonight. It's a weird start time.
Well, because they used so many pitchers yesterday.
They did. So 9 o'clock start time tonight for Brewers Cubs. Phillies Dodgers a 6 o'clock start time, but out there on the West Coast it's gonna be a 3 o'clock start time. So pretty strange, honestly.
It is odd because the Phillies and the Dodgers have been the nightcap so far this week because, again, they're out there on the West Coast. It makes sense. And, yeah, the Brewers and Cubs, it's kind of been that middle afternoon, series so far. So I don't know why they decided to flip-flop that. I don't know. Maybe it's more time to figure out the pitching situation for the Brewers and the Cubs. But, yeah, those are the 2 games happening today. So Phillies-Dodgers at 6:08, Brewers and Cubs coming up today at 9:08. And, of course, you'll have tomorrow the Tigers and the Mariners in the 5th game of that series to determine who moves on to the ALCS. That'll be at 8 o'clock on Fox tomorrow night.
Man, I think the Mariners really burned a golden opportunity here. They were up 3-0 in this game, Tyler, and obviously when they were up 3-0, there was still a lot of baseball left to go because the Tigers ended up getting 3 runs back in the 5th, 4 in the 6th, and really just put it down from there. I mean, the reason I say the Mariners really blew a golden opportunity, guess who you have to face tomorrow night?
Yep.
Tarik Skubal. I'm just saying. I mean, look, I know he gave up 2 home runs the other day, but he was still good enough to keep you in that game. I mean, he is going to be a tough out on Friday. And I don't know who the Mariners are going to throw yet. I knew
it says they got Kirby as of right now.
Okay, I'm looking on MLB. It said TBD, but you'll have George Kirby going, but I like Skubal over just about anybody. So I feel pretty good about the Tigers, especially since they finally got that offense going. That it had been a struggle for them for a lot of this postseason offensively. So if they play like that tomorrow, I know you got to go on the road to Seattle, but I feel pretty good about Skubal and the Tigers.
And if the other 2 NLDS series get extended, you'll have Cubs and Brewers coming up Saturday at 4:30, and then Dodgers and Phillies coming up Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And, God, if that happens, we're going to have an even fuller day of sports happening alongside a great weekend of college football. We'll get into that Week 7 slate, by the way, coming up next. There's some pretty high-profile games between a lot of ranked teams that are really going to kind of continue to set the table for expectations within conferences as well as the college football playoff. Wes Mitchell will jump in here with us in the next hour, and we'll dive into all that coming up next as the Extra Point rolls into the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating here on your Thursday on the Game.
When it comes to HVAC replacements, AAA Heating and Air is the go-to name in the Midlands with guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. It's no wonder they're the best in the business. But wait, there's so much more. Did you know AAA Heating and Air also offers incredible deals for repairs? So if your system is broken and you're worried about the cost, they've got you covered. AAA offers up to 12-month payment plans with no credit check for all repairs. Yep, homeowners just need a valid bank account and you're all set. So don't sweat it. Call AAA Heating and Air today to take advantage of these amazing deals. The number to call AAA is 803-677-1500. Again, that's 803-677-1500. Tell them you heard about them on 107.5 The Game. Your comfort is just a call away.
Welcome back in. It is now the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Ed and Jack Veltri. Wes Mitchell be coming along here in a few minutes. Running a little bit behind. Had some projects to finish up, so he'll come in here with us probably in segment number 2. But, man, what a loaded weekend of college football we have coming up. And we're now finally out of that first month where most teams are playing non-conference games. Now, I know Ole Miss is playing like Washington State this upcoming weekend, so you still have a couple mixed in there. But for the most part, everybody's getting in to actual conference play. And I love and hate the way that conferences like the Big Ten set up their non-conference stuff, where everybody just plays all that stuff in the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season and then gets into conference play, because that makes the first month mind-numbing when you want to watch Big Ten teams. But once you get into the month of October, usually it's all, Big Ten conference games from there, and that's what we get a lot of this weekend. Obviously, a ton of great SEC games going on as well. And, man, we look around the top 25, tons of really intriguing matchups to pay attention to this weekend.
Yeah, and look, somebody's got to play Washington State every week. So,
yeah.
Somebody does, since the Pac-12 is no longer what it used to be.
It'll be the Pac-8, I believe, next year.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
It'll kind of be a conference again.
Man. And when did that conference stop being called? When did they move to the Pac-10? Because they were the Pac-8 for a bit, right?
Yeah, they were the Pac-8. They became I can't remember which teams joined to make them the Pac-10, but I grew up on the Pac-10. And then they became 12, 2010, 2011-ish, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And because you had, I want to say, Colorado and Utah. Don't quote me on that. I think when they joined, it became the Pac-12. And obviously they just completely fell back into what they've become now with that collapse a couple years ago. And, yeah, they're like, numbers don't mean anything in sports anymore, especially in college sports. We had Jeff Goodman on from Field of 68 last week on the halftime show to talk about basketball. And that was the same day that the latest report came out about the NCAA tournament possibly expanding to 76. And I asked him, I was like, do you guys think you're going to have to change your name to Field of 76 before too long? And he said, numbers don't mean anything. I think we're fine at 68. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right, because the Big Ten doesn't have 10 teams. The Big 12 doesn't have 12 teams. The Pac-12 doesn't have 12 teams. Like, what do numbers mean anymore, right?
No, I mean, numbers are just thrown around at this point. And, but I'm sure in the next few years we'll get to, 76 won't be enough, and we'll eventually get up to 96 or even 100. But that's another story for another day. Getting into the best games of the weekend, I mean, there are a lot of really good ones. I feel like the ones that we are going to talk about, probably the more underrated ones of the weekend, like Bama, Missouri is sneaky kind of good game. Going to Como is going to be, a little bit tricky at noon for Alabama. Alabama coming off the nice win over Vanderbilt. I think we both agree that they are probably gotten knocked off all the cobwebs from earlier in the season stuff and the rust, and they're looking like the Alabama that we expected when Kalen DeBoer was first hired. But it's going to be tricky. This is going to be a real prove-it game for Missouri in a lot of ways, because look, Missouri has been good these last few years, but it feels like they've always been missing that real big signature win. This is an opportunity to go get it at home. And
I think it's funny that you mentioned that this is kind of a sneaky underrated game, because by all accounts it shouldn't be, because you have the number 8 team versus the number 14 team. Missouri's undefeated. Obviously we saw them a couple weeks ago. They have one of the most exciting players in college football in Ahmad Hardy that is just allergic, to being tackled. It seems like this year, everything tells you that this game should be a bigger deal. But I think, and you're right there, when you think about Eli Drinkwitz's time at Missouri and the fact that he's put together multiple double-digit win seasons these past 2 years and has the opportunity to do that once again this year, I can't think of that signature huge wow win in any of those years. They've handled their business, and they've had some easier conference slates, but I mean, maybe beating Tennessee a couple years ago when Tennessee was 13, I guess maybe is the biggest win there. They obviously had the Ohio State in the bowl game, but you can question how much Ohio State cared about that game. So I don't think a lot of people put stock into that one necessarily, but that, oh my God, they knocked off Alabama, they knocked off Georgia, they knocked off Texas. They haven't had that win, but this weekend provides them that opportunity.
Now, another team that has a huge opportunity in front of them. Like, talk about a way to kind of like forget about what happened a few weeks ago, going to Bloomington and getting massacred by Indiana. Illinois.
Yeah.
Illinois still hanging on in the top 25. Again, outside of that Indiana game, they've been pretty good this season. Obviously got the huge win over Southern Cal. You went to Duke a few weeks ago and won that game. But you got mighty Ohio State coming into town, into Champaign. I mean, talk about a win that would do wonders for that program out in Illinois. It would 100% show that they are for real and that one game was an anomaly against Indiana, in my opinion.
If Illinois were to win this game this upcoming weekend, I almost think they'd be a lock for the college football playoff. But the way the rest of their schedule sets up, because they play Ohio State, then they play Washington, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Northwestern. Now, you got teams like Maryland that are certainly tricky and getting, still flying under the radar a little bit. But if they can beat Ohio State and run out the rest of their schedule and be 11-1, they're in. No question about it.
No question.
Especially considering how good we think Indiana really is this year, that's not really going to knock them at all. You knock off Ohio State and you can manage, even if you lose one more game. Like, let's say you beat Ohio State and let's say you lose to Maryland. I still think a 10-2 Illinois team with a win over at the time, number 1 Ohio State, I think you're in.
You should be in. Should be in. But if if there are a ton of 10-2 teams this year, and it does come down to, okay, who are your losses? I mean, look, a 53-point loss to Indiana does not look good. And honestly, like, I know Maryland's been pretty good this year, but look, any loss you would have to any of those 5 teams after Ohio State, I think it's a bad one. I mean, going to Washington, Washington's pretty good this year, but I mean, lose any of those other games to Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern. I mean, you're basically digging your own grave at that point. So, we'll see. A win this weekend would just be huge. And look, on the flip side, if Ohio State wins this game, it's business as usual. So,
do you know Ohio State has yet to give up more than 9 points in a game so far this year?
They've been great.
It's so funny because, again, they're defending national champions, number 1 team in the country, but you almost haven't been paying attention to them, right? Because they've been so good and so efficient. And yes, we all watched them play Texas in week number 1 and win that game. And now, obviously, Texas looks a whole lot worse than we thought at that point in time. But, like, they've just been quietly going about their business, beating teams pretty soundly. The closest game they've had since week number 1 was a 18-point win over Washington on the road 2 weeks ago. They slaughtered Minnesota last time out. I have a sneaking suspicion they're probably going to win this game against Minnesota, something like 35-10 or something along those lines. Just kind of keep handling their business as usual, because that's just how good they are. They're so good, they're almost not worth almost not worth talking about most of the time.
They aren't. If there is, we know Indiana Oregon's going to be a huge game this weekend. I mean, does it feel like Indiana? Remember last year they went into Columbus, played Ohio State, as expected.
Yep.
Got the brakes beat off them. Is this going to be different? I would like to think it is. I mean, Fernando Mendoza has been excellent this year. I'm starting to see he's getting buzzed as a potential number 1 pick option for the New York Jets, who
Heisman Trophy, all that kind of stuff.
Like, is this Indiana team going to be able to do the unthinkable and win this game?
Here's the thing. They don't have to win the game. Like, again, all their goals are still in front of them, even if they lose, and their schedule sets up pretty favorably after this weekend as well. What I saw out of them against Illinois, it's not just that they beat Illinois, it's the fact that they completely murdered them for 4 quarters of that game and beat them by 53 points with a quarterback that is being thought of as one of the best in college football in Fernando Mendoza. I think they are capable of going on the road to win this game. I'm not picking them to win. I think Oregon's still going to win this game at the end of the day, but this could end up being a really good 4-quarter fight.
I mean, it's not a must-win game, but I'll tell you why I think it kind of is in a way. Like, for one, I mean, I think there's probably still some people that look at that. I mean, like, the Illinois win was great, but there's probably some people that still look at it like, okay, like if Indiana loses this weekend, then it's no different than last year, right? Where they won all the games that were not super tough, but they lost the more important games on the schedule. And again, different story this year because the win over Illinois is a really, really good one right now. but I feel like there is probably going to still be that consensus out there. Like if Indiana gets destroyed this weekend by Oregon, you're going to have a situation where you go into the playoff and it's like, all right, they're automatically going to be in with one loss, but are they going to be a great team? We'll see what happens this weekend, but I think Mendoza's a great quarterback. I think he should be talked about more in this Heisman conversation and so much more, getting a lot more buzz. But I think this is a huge game for Indiana to kind of shut down a lot of the naysayers that maybe still are out there.
I believe I also saw this is the first top 10 versus top 10 matchup that CBS has gotten in their new media rights deal with the Big Ten, where, and again, unfortunately for them, Fox gets the pick of the litter first when it comes to Big Noon Saturday. So the best matchups typically go in that noon window for Fox, and CBS gets second pick as opposed to when they were with the SEC and always got the first pick. So yeah, when LSU and Alabama played each other as 1 and 2, that always went to CBS. So this is the biggest game that CBS, that Gary and Brad Nessler have had since they've been with this Big Ten deal now for the second year.
I think this beats going to Ohio State, Washington recently, or any of those games Penn State UCLA was a pretty good one to get for CBS.
It shouldn't have been. That is a game that, because here's the thing, I have not watched a ton of the Big Ten on CBS because typically the game isn't really that good. I watched the more of it than I have in the past 2 or season and a half Saturday, watching them call that game against UCLA. But otherwise, that shouldn't have happened. That was a game nobody was thinking about tuning into because it shouldn't have been close.
Speaking of those types of games, we talked about the big 3 games of the weekend.
Yep.
Is there another game, maybe a ranked team versus an unranked team, that you just feel like, ooh, there's upset alert out there?
There's a lot here, and I actually want to get into that on the other side as we're going to make our case of who we think is at the biggest potential risk for an upset, because this season's been rife with upsets so far, and that's what's made it so fun. Because like, look into last weekend, right? We looked at the full slate of games, and yeah, you had Alabama, Vanderbilt, and a few other games here and there that were of intrigue, but like, we didn't think it was going to be a chaotic Saturday. And then you have 2 teams in the top 10, 2 teams that were 1 and 2 in the preseason poll, go down to unranked opponents that, or one had already fired their coach and one was thinking about firing their coach, that we never saw coming. So the unpredictability of this season, I feel like, is at an all-time high. So I look at a slate like this weekend, and there's a lot of opportunities for teams with a number next to their name right now to go down.
There definitely are. And again, like you said, we'll talk about it here in the next segment. But again, there's been a lot of parity so far this season, much like last year. Would not shock me if we see a few more dominoes fall this weekend.
So we'll make our case on who we think is on potential upset alert coming up this weekend. Reminder, of course, Gamecocks game day starting on Saturday at 2:30. You can listen to right here on the game and hang out with myself and Terry Ford over to O'Hara's in Lexington while we do the pregame show. Then Saturday night, 7:45 kick right here on the game as well. You can go hang out with Terry at O'Hara's for that watch party, or hang out with myself, Preston Thorne, and Jen Jensen for the 107.5 The Game watch along, which will be live on our YouTube channel as we react as the game goes along with you, watching Carolina take on LSU. All that coming up Saturday right here on the game. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher, Wes Mitchell jumps in here with us coming up next here on your Thursday on the game.
If you're out there looking for a local, reliable HVAC service for your home or your business in the Midlands, reach out to our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. KrantzCooling.com, K-R-A-N-T-Z, cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com, or give Justin Krantz, the general manager over there, and his team a call, 803-755-0799. 9-3. I've had Krantz Cooling out to my home several times. They did a mini split for me in the garage. They've checked out all the other units at my house to make sure they're running in tip-top shape. Love my experience so much that when my mom moved to Irmo, I got them to go out to her home too. They put in 2 mini splits for her. They handle all her HVAC needs as well. They could do the same for you. KrantzCooling.com or 803-755-0793. Since 1983, Krantz Cooling, their team has been providing great service to business owners and families in the Midlands. They can do the same for you.
Welcome back in. Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's our Ed Jack Beltry, Wes Mitchell hanging out with you here on your Thursday on the game. Of course, getting things ready for Carolina to head on the road to Baton Rouge coming up on Saturday. But Wes, Jack and I were talking about in that last segment a very, very fun day of college football ahead. A lot of good ranked versus ranked matchups is really kind of getting into the meat of conference play now, and should be a fun Saturday leading into what's hopefully a fun Saturday night in Baton Rouge for the Gamecocks.
I'm excited, boys. Last week during the bye week, you definitely had some good games. You had some upsets, but, even going in, I was like, man, no Carolina game to really focus on. Hopefully we get a couple of good games, and there were, but it didn't quite have, for me, the pop that this weekend has. And man, I think Alabama Missouri is going to be a war. Alabama going there. A noon kickoff is a little bit disappointing. I feel like this should have gotten a little bit of maybe a primetime treatment, but this is a Missouri team, and we've seen what they can do. We saw them play South Carolina. We saw, the fact that Alabama is playing much better right now, but they are still vulnerable. This is not the Alabama of, old, where they're just – I think Alabama won games at times during the Saban era before kickoff. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just get so hyped up for, oh, this is Alabama. You maybe try to do things you can't do if you're the opponent. And, I'm just sitting here like, all right, is Ty Simpson going to throw for 500 yards on that Missouri secondary, or is Ahmad Hardy going to run for 500 yards on the Alabama defense? Because certainly we saw firsthand, I don't know if the Alabama run defense is like terrible, but I think they are vulnerable to a guy like Hardy. But we saw firsthand, guys, like if you can execute on offense in the passing game, unless Missouri has improved a ton in the last few weeks, you can do some damage.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. And Jack brought up a point in the last segment there. It's one that when you look at the fact of where these two teams are ranked, the fact that Missouri is undefeated at 5-0, it feels like there should be a bigger deal made out of this game. But I feel like a lot of people still don't view Missouri as serious as probably they should. And Jack brought up the point that, in Eli Drinkwitz's tenure so far, including in the last 2 years where they've won double-digit games, they haven't had that signature, wow win. Now, beating an Alabama that's ranked in the top 10 and looking like one of the best teams in college football would certainly be that. But that's kind of the next thing that Eli Drinkwitz needs to check off his list, is having that win that kind of sends shockwaves through college football a little bit, which this weekend will provide you that opportunity.
No, it most definitely will. And going back to Wes's point, I mean, look, Alabama's got some dudes on defense. We've heard about that defense, with the guys they got returning and stuff. But have they faced a running back like Ahmad Hardy yet? South Carolina, I think, has some dudes on defense, but they were no match to bring down the almighty Ahmad Hardy. I mean, the main thing in this game for Alabama, if they're going to win, is I think you do have to stop Ahmad. I mean, you got to hold him to, and it's a tall task, but hold him to under 100 yards somehow. But you also have to worry about Jamal Roberts as well. He's a really good running back that was also really tough for South Carolina to bring down a few weeks ago. So, I feel like this is the type of game that Missouri needs to win, just to kind of prove to some people that they're legit. Put us on your radar, because we're a legit football team this season.
Well, and it's worth noting, Alabama has struggled against the run. They gave up about 230 yards to both Georgia and Florida State so far this year. And again, that's the MO of what Missouri's offense is going to do. So, yeah, Ty Simpson may go out there and have a great day himself in that secondary, but I very much think Ahmad Hardy can go out there and carve up this Alabama team, who they themselves have had their own struggles with missing tackles too so far this year.
Yeah, it's kind of a strength versus weakness in terms of when Alabama's passing game is on the field, and then a strength versus weakness in terms of when Missouri's run game going up against Alabama's run defense. And, I think when you look at the yards allowed, this is just not – I'm looking right now. This is average yards per carry allowed in conference games only. Do y'all know how many yards a carry Alabama is allowing right now in SEC games?
4.5.
Dude, 6.96.
Oh my God.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, Jack. 6.96. That is insane. An Alabama defense is allowing 7 yards a carry in conference play, and they're going up against Ahmad Hardy.
Well,
so he may run for 500, but Ty Simpson is going to throw for 500.
Yeah, I was about to say,
which means it'll probably be 7-3 in the way football works. But on paper, this is insane.
And don't forget about Bo Pribula in this game. I mean, he's also somebody that I feel like hurt South Carolina a little bit in the ground game. When he needed to take off and run, he was effective. And he wasn't great in the passing game, But I feel like that is going to be such a hidden weapon in this game of things that we're just not talking about. Is if Beau Pribula can have a relatively good game, that helps Missouri so much more, especially if there are a few hiccups in the ground game, which, I mean, against this Alabama defense, they should be able to run the ball effectively with that two-headed monster they got.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. And, yeah, you're right. This kind of screams like it should be more of a primetime game, 7:30 type of kickoff. But the way it kind of sets up for us as viewers, considering the fact that we'll be tied up at 7:45, this is great because it allows you to kind of start your day with a high-profile game. You'll get Oregon and Indiana at 3:30, as we talked about a little bit earlier as well. So I think it kind of spaces out well to where you have key matchups happening throughout the day before, of course, we tune in to see South Carolina, take down LSU, or hopefully take down LSU this weekend.
Guys, maybe it's just my old age, but I have just learned to appreciate a nooner when it's a good game. Like I feel like the big noon Saturday from the Fox guys, kind of where the Big Ten will have that big game to start off your day. There's no. It feels like fall outside right now.
Yeah.
Actually, there's like no better feeling for a sports viewer than wake up on Saturday, go outside. There's that little. I don't want it to be cold. Like
chill in the air.
I'm not a Yankee like Jack.
Wearing shorts during in the snow.
But
yeah.
There's that little crisp chill in the air. Maybe go get you a workout in, like get the juices flowing. Then maybe get you a coffee. Get back. I'm not a watch 3 hours of game day guy, but I'm a casual, like, all right, I ran a couple of errands. Let me get back for the final hour.
Yep.
Throw game day on. I do watch the picks every single week. I watch that part of it. And then they just roll you straight into that noon slate, and it's an actual game you want to watch, not a game that you're watching going, well, I love football, so I'll watch it. Like this one is I think is there another good noon game tomorrow?
Ohio State and Illinois.
Yeah, that's a nooner as well.
The big noon Saturday.
Yeah, so you got two pretty strong noon games. Like, to me, like, if you're a sports fan, if you're a college football fan, like, I just described the literal perfect start to your day.
We're going to get one next week, thank God.
It's really funny you mentioned that, by the way, with the noon game next week, which we don't know if it's going to be 12 or 12:45 against Oklahoma, but Carolina's played so many night games this year, and in years past, people are like, man, we don't get enough night games. Why are we getting so many noon games? Now I'm seeing people say, God, I'm so glad we're finally getting a noon game, an early kick. Thank God. It's kind of funny how that perception shifts pretty quickly.
Well, you just I love you guys, but you just described Gamecock fans. Like, there will at some point we're gonna find something to complain about. And sure enough, if it was all nooners, it would be, man, we don't get any night games around here. You get too many night games, then it's, well, I'd sure love a 4 o'clock kick. I've been getting home at 3 in the morning, driving back to Charleston. So, I think fans are fickle about things.
They are.
Jack will be over here complaining about late nights at the press box. But
Jack this week's got to complain about driving 3 hours to Baton Rouge from Mobile.
Yeah, that's
that decision was out of my hands. So,
but by the way, guys, in a sort of example of small sample sizes in statistics, because I was pulling up that Alabama stat, y'all know how much Missouri is averaging defensive yards per carry in SEC games?
Is it lower?
Yes.
Okay, good. So they're not worse than Alabama.
3.5.
No, the statistical oddity. How many SEC games has Missouri played?
Oh, just the one. Oh, wow.
So they've allowed -9.
-9. Wow.
So which
that's incredible.
Is 0.4 negative 0.41 yards per carry allowed because of the -9 to South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina helped out plenty with that.
That is actually kind of funny. So who is at most risk of getting upset this upcoming weekend? A lot of top 25 teams taking on unranked opponents. We'll dive into that coming up next as the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating rolls along here on your Thursday on the Game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. ClassicRoofingSC.com is the place to learn more about our friends at Classic. And I've been telling you about Classic for over a year now. They've been to my home to help fix my roof. They can do the exact same for you. Obviously, you hope you don't need them, but if you own a home or you own a business, at some point you are going to have to take care of that roof. And they're going to help you just go through the process and make it simple. 803-590-7870. Let them go ahead. Just call them today or go to that website and hit the free estimate button. Let them come out and go ahead and start taking a look at that roof and let you know, hey, are there some problem areas now? Are there some problem areas later? Is there something that needs to go ahead and be fixed? Just hit them up right now. ClassicRoofingSC.com, 803-590-7870.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Jack Beltry along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Looking ahead to the weekend of college football action, a full Week 7 slate with a lot of ranked versus ranked matchups, but a lot of ranked versus unranked matchups. And through the first 6 weeks of the college football season, At least one top 25 team has lost to an unranked opponent in 5 of those 6 weeks. And this weekend, 14 ranked teams are taking on unranked opponents. One of those, of course, being South Carolina, going down to Baton Rouge to take on number 11 LSU. So we'll steal a page from the Gamecock Central Hour as we're going to make your case. The question is, and this will exclude Carolina and LSU, of the other 13 teams in the top 25 taking on unranked opponents, who is at most risk of being upset this weekend? Jack, you can start.
Do you know how this works, Jack? You ever done a make your case before? Have y'all?
No, I haven't.
Oh, make your case.
I
Rookie.
heard the music. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, you're in the courtroom.
This is a high dollar production here, Jack.
Yeah, you got to convince us, the jury, on why you believe what you believe, and you're making your case on which team is at most risk of getting upset this weekend.
Well, let's see. It's
I'm gonna let Jack stall for a second and
Jack
just
can
say,
filibuster.
I'm just gonna say, if this was a buy or sell, are we all buying that this is going to happen for some team or
yeah,
not?
no
You're
doubt.
100% buying.
It's probably multiple teams.
You buying or selling?
buying and selling what?
If there's going to be upsets of
if
top
there will be
25
at least
teams.
one.
Yes, of course. There typically always seems to be one. So, Wes, would you like to go first?
Yeah,
Show us how it's done.
I've actually got I think it could be a couple. I'll go with what could be a layup, man. Honestly, Arizona State is ranked.
Mm-hmm.
Utah is not. They're both 4-1. Utah is favored by 5.5 in this game, and Arizona State's got to go to Salt Lake City, which is just a place that is not easy to play. That would be an upset by rankings. It would not be an upset by Vegas standards. So I think just by what Vegas is telling us, that's an easy one to pick. Now, Devon Dampier, their quarterback at Utah, very, very, very talented, but has been up and down, I feel like. Who did I watch them lose to?
Texas Tech?
Yes.
Yeah.
He did not look good that day. So he's got to upgrade the play there. I'm a little bit surprised that this is such a big line, to be honest with you. Like, I thought Arizona State, Sam Leavitt, those guys, what they did last year, I know they lost to Mississippi State, but I thought they would still be getting a little bit of love. But, yeah, that's an easy pick for me. There was another one that I feel like, Oklahoma and Texas. I don't know why Vegas had Texas favored in this game, even with the Mateer news. So maybe I don't go there. But I think there's plenty of options for Jack to pick. How about that?
And kind of going along those same lines with why is Texas favored over Oklahoma? Southern Cal is favored over Michigan this weekend. I would probably go with this as the upset pick. Michigan is going to the Coliseum for the first time since I think I read 1957. Michigan's been fine this year, 4-1. They obviously lost to Oklahoma early on in the season. USC is coming off of the really brutal loss in Champaign against Illinois. I kind of like this matchup for Southern Cal to kind of get back on track. They're actually favored in this game by 2.5 points. Give me an upset over a top 15 team here. If I'm picking an upset, this is probably
It's not an upset, though, if they're favored.
But they're yes.
From the standpoint of an unranked team beating a ranked team, we'll quantify that as an upset. Now, does Sharon Moore complain about the travel if they lose this game? Like
he shouldn't.
Franklin did?
You should don't bring up travel or injuries in your opening statement.
Don't be like Lincoln Riley.
That should be a rule. James Franklin has complained about it. Here's the thing, guys. They ain't wrong. Like,
no, they're not.
Don't point it out. But if you look at how some of these games play out, and I'm not a great picker. This is not like I told you so. In our pick'em, I had Illinois beating Southern Cal for this very reason. Like, going all the way out there is not easy. But Michigan going all the way out here is not that easy either. So I wouldn't be shocked at all. Southern Cal has gotten pretty good quarterback play this year. You've got a freshman who, how long are you a freshman if you're a starter? But it is still relatively new to the game in terms of college ball with Underwood. I can see why Southern Cal is favored in this game. Like, I feel like them at home is a different story than them when they have to go all the way across the country, across time zones, and those flights can wipe you out.
It's a lot, and I mean, when do those teams even leave for? Do they take more time to make that trip out there,
I think they'll leave like a day earlier.
Yeah.
So typically, I think most teams would leave like on Friday. I think they leave like Thursday to get themselves acclimated, get used to the time change and all that kind of stuff. I think that's typically what they do.
The big thing for Michigan in this game, if Michigan is going to avoid an upset in this one, they got to be able to run the football the way they have been. Justice Haynes has been really, really nice as advertised, I think. Maybe even a little bit better. He's gone for over 100 yards in every single game so far this season for Michigan. That's huge, especially like you said, Wes, when you have a freshman quarterback like Bryce Underwood, which at this point, is he really still even a freshman, as you alluded to. I mean, get that ground game going makes things a lot easier for Bryce in this offense for sure.
Let me throw one out at y'all, because typically when you fire a coach, you either fall into a deep pit and get worse, or you somehow get better. We've seen Virginia Tech play better since firing Brent Pry. Obviously, UCLA just got a whole lot better and pulled off a huge upset after firing Deshaun Foster. Arkansas, in the first game of the Bobby Petrino 2.0 era, is going to Tennessee, a Tennessee team that is struggling a little bit on defense. They've allowed a lot of points and a lot of yards. Bobby Petrino is a mastermind of offense. Taylor Green's a very capable quarterback. I could see this happening. I could really see them going in there and upsetting Tennessee on Saturday.
Was this on our pick'em?
I think was it not?
I don't think so.
I can't remember.
Did you pick it, Tyler, or you're just saying it could happen?
I'm saying it could happen. I don't even remember if it was on the pick'em or not.
This one is not
on the pick'em. Okay, because I was like, I don't remember it being on there.
The other two games we have talked about, Michigan, Southern Cal, and Arizona State, Utah, are on there. I put Florida, Texas A&M on there, so I guess that could have been the one that could have gotten replaced. But
now, see, that game screams to me, for all Billy Napier did to get himself off the scorching hot seat, it's going to go right back to being scorching hot by losing this game by like 20 points.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is the hot take here, is that he's getting canned after the A&M game. But
well, you said they're going to be 1-5, so you weren't.
Yeah,
100%
I know, not 100%, but if he still gets canned,
if they're 2-4 and he gets canned, you called specifically at the beginning of the season, he get canned. Okay,
we'll give you credit for that.
Yeah,
one.
What is it they do in high school? Partial credit.
No, I'll give you full credit on that. They got to go to College Station. On your pick, though, Tyler, the fact that it is in Knoxville, I think makes it a little bit more far-fetched from happening.
Tricky.
It's a 4:15 game, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you never know. How about Georgia-Auburn, though? I think, is that – the line's pretty close on that one.
It's really funny because I was talking to my dad yesterday, and, again, Auburn hasn't looked great so far this year.
Is your dad a massive Georgia fan?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I grew up with. But we were talking about it yesterday, and we're both agreeing, like, weird things happen on the plains. Like, if this game is being played in Athens, I'd feel pretty comfortable by saying, okay, Georgia's got it. But that weird voodoo on the plains, man, you just never – it took a Brock Bowers – like crazy touchdown when they played there 2 years ago to pull away and win that game. Obviously, we've seen plenty of crazy things happen there. You never know, especially at night, what can happen at Jordan-Hare Stadium.
Am I wrong in thinking this game has not really been talked about all that much this week for it to be Georgia, Auburn? Like, I know Auburn's 0-2 in the SEC.
But it's a rivalry.
But it is at Auburn, to his point. Georgia's favored by 3.5. Like, this is not some double-digit
No, this is a night game, too. I mean, crazy things happen out there.
Yeah, I just feel like I haven't heard much buzz about this game.
Auburn's defense is pretty good. As porous as their offense has been, their defense is pretty solid. So we'll see. It's not going to be easy by any means.
This is another example of the weird case of you hire an offensive-minded coach, and then the other side of the ball is way better than their side of the ball.
Yeah, it is. And Georgia doesn't have a good pass rush, and Auburn struggled protecting Jackson Arnold. So we'll see how that plays out this weekend. Jack's got to catch a flight tomorrow, so he won't be on the show. We'll get his final thoughts and predictions for what's going to happen out in Baton Rouge coming up next as we wrap up the hour. Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating here on The Game.
Really, for us defensively, at a home game, it should be more of a not. I mean, they're not gonna have a lot of crowd when Nuss is out there making his checks, and like I said, they love football down there. They understand when to make noise and when not. So, but we do a good job of making sure when our offense is on the field with crowd noise, there's gonna be some noise. So we do a great job of hand signaling and make sure we communicating the correct way with the right gestures and sign language and eye contact, and especially on the road, you have to be, you're in a different environment, so you have to do a great job of enhancing all those little things to communicate better.
Welcome back in. Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler, Jack, and Chris wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday. Clayton White yesterday speaking in the media about the challenges of playing in that tough road environment down there in Baton Rouge against the number 11 LSU Tigers. Coming up this weekend, again, Jack's got to catch a flight tomorrow morning, so he won't be on tomorrow's show. So we'll get your final thoughts and see what you think is going to happen coming up on Saturday night here. And again, interested to see what your experience of going down there and experiencing the best of Death Valley is gonna be like this weekend.
It's gonna be a lot of fun, I think. I mean, I hear good things about it. I mean, obviously, I've watched LSU a lot on TV at night to get an idea of what that environment's like. But I feel like it'll be like one of those things where you just don't truly know how intense it's going to be until you get there. And look, LSU, I mean, they're kind of in a spot where they need this game as bad as South Carolina does. I mean, like, I was talking with an LSU reporter yesterday to get some insight on the Tigers, and the thing is, like, Brian Kelly, LSU, that fan base, I mean, if they lose this game this weekend, I mean, people are going to be calling for his job and stuff. No surprise. You lose 2 games in a row, especially if you lose at night at home to South Carolina. Things change a lot, but the jury still feels like it's out on Brian Kelly from what I am told by talking to other people and stuff, but we'll see.
It is an interesting dynamic, and we have Hunt Palmer from the ESPN station down there in Baton Rouge coming up with us in the next hour, and I want to ask him about that because when you look at it, they're the number 11 team in the country. They're 4-1 on the season. All of their goals still ahead of them. They have a very capable quarterback that just hasn't played up to the standard they need him to this year, but he's still capable of doing that, assuming he gets back to full health. So the world isn't crumbling down around them, but when you read their message boards or read things written about the team, you would think they were like 1-4 right now or something.
I think, guys, they feel like they've already seen the movie is a part of it. Chris and I talk about this a lot when people get pre-mad about, I'm going to go ahead and get mad about what I think is about to happen. And LSU fans, I think, have, like, if you watch the documentary even, their players are going, man, we get Nuss back, it's going to be national title or bust. Yeah. And I think part of it is, and you can get yourself caught a little bit thinking this way. Part of it is they just have not played that well overall. And they're going, well, hey, I see what's ahead. If we keep playing this way, it's not going to be pretty. The beauty of sports is you can continue to improve. You can get better. You can play up to your standard. And if you're an LSU fan, you want to look at it from a positive standpoint, you're going, hey, defense has been pretty good. Nussmeier has it in him. He just has not been healthy. So if you can get him back to what he was, maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel there for them. The other side, there's a weird amount of pressure on both of these teams going into this game for kind of different reasons. But, Carolina fans, for the most part, are frustrated with the way South Carolina has played this year. LSU fans are certainly frustrated with the way, is there any aspect of this game, y'all tell me, is there any aspect of this game where being at LSU kind of, have y'all seen the talk about the Phillies, how some of their players are like, I mean, it's silly to me, but they're going, hey, it's a great ballpark to play in when things are going well, but they're talking about how it's almost when they're not playing well, it has become a negative for the Phillies because you have this crazy atmosphere, but those people are so passionate. We see this on social media with South Carolina fans too. So passionate that they create one of the best home field advantages you can possibly ever have. But that same passion gets focused into the negative if things aren't going well. Mm-hmm. I don't think we've necessarily got to that point in Baton Rouge yet, but if you go into halftime, this is a tight game. You go into halftime, the offense still looks the same as it has for 5 games so far this season. does that pressure of the home crowd actually build a little bit?
We'll see. Definitely going to be interesting to see how that goes and if Carolina can take that crowd out of the game. Last minute here, Jack, what happens on Saturday from your perspective?
Oh, man. Yeah, I was telling Wes during the break, I was looking at some of the staff picks we've got. I'm not going to say who's who, but a few people have picked South Carolina to win this game. I can't in good conscience be one of them. I can't. I'm picking LSU to win this game. It's going to be close. Tell me, besides Alabama, what teams go into Baton Rouge at night and come away with a win? Not many. I'm picking South Carolina to lose this game. Let's go with a close one. I'll go 24-21 LSU wins.
Okay. We'll give our score thoughts tomorrow. Safe travels, and we'll get your reaction to everything on Monday.
Sucks. Yeah. All right. See you guys.
All right. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game.
All right, guys, been telling you all season, time to upgrade the man cave, the TV watching at the home, and the way to do it, hit up our friends at Integrated Media, 803-948-8327, integratedmediainc.com, as well as the website where you can get an idea of all of their great services that they have for you. They have been to Chris Clark's home. They have been to my home. Let them come to your home as well and upgrade your entire smart home system, and then you can just run it straight off a tablet. That means your home theater or just your TV watching in the living room, all the audio and video, surround sound, TV installations, and then if you want to really add to this, security and cameras, give you that peace of mind at your house, also all running off the same tablet. If you want to upgrade your home viewing experience, nobody better in the Midlands to hit up than our friends at Integrated Media at integratedmediainc.com.
11 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell here in studio. Chris Clark joining us here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Or are we just going to assume you're on super secret business that can't be discussed, Chris?
Always. That's always going to be the running gag, even if it's not anything serious at all, even if it's silly, which sometimes it is. Sometimes it's serious. Yeah. Parts unknown, super secret mission.
Yeah, and details come out when details come out, right?
That's right, yes. We'll let you know when we can let you know.
Absolutely. Obviously, we're getting set for Carolina and LSU coming up this weekend. Jack, who's going to be in the air tomorrow, won't be on the show, went ahead and logged his prediction. He does not see South Carolina winning this game. He has LSU winning it 24-21, though he said, from what he's gotten from people that have put their picks in so far, a couple people are siding with South Carolina on this one. I feel like it's going to be a bit of a 50-50 split on people that think Carolina can pull this upset and people that think, nah, LSU should have no problem here.
Yeah, guys, I obviously the line on this thing, depending on when you look and where you look, right around 10, a little more, a little less. So, Vegas obviously thinks that LSU is going to win, maybe kind of going away, but I think there's actually a lot of similarities about both these teams. One factor, though, that I think will be very interesting is we just got the first kind of availability report of the week last night, and it wasn't exactly maybe what you wanted to see if you were South Carolina coming off the bye. Now, it is still early. Chris likes to point out, hey, there's definitely times on here where early in the week a guy will be doubtful, and then by the end of the week, they're able to play. A guy will be questionable. By the end of the week, they'll be able to play. But you were definitely hoping with the bye week that, especially Casey Henry, who has been your starting right tackle, who has quietly probably been your best performer on the offensive line, was going to be available. You were hoping that Nolan Hay, who started against Missouri but then got hurt in that game, has not been back. And, frankly, guys, you were hoping Judge Collier was not listed on here anymore. I know they kind of eased him back in, but so for those who didn't see it, you had Henry and Hay listed as doubtful. Marky Anderson is out, and then a couple of new guys on here, cornerback Miles Norwood, along with Collier, listed as questionable, and then defensive tackle Troy Pikes, no idea what happened there, but also listed as questionable on the Wednesday edition. Shameless plug, you can listen to Shane Beamer on 107.5 tonight, call-in show.
Yep.
He'll probably talk about this stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll get another report, obviously, tonight, get one Friday, get one 90 minutes before kickoff on Saturday. And so we'll see. I mean, you're right, Wes. While it may not be common for a guy to be listed as doubtful and then ultimately go play in the game, especially play in the game at 100%, right? The normal amount of snaps you would want to see a guy take. It did happen earlier this year with Brady Hunt, where he was listed as doubtful going into, Vandy week. All of a sudden, Saturday rolls around. Actually, before Saturday, I think it might have been by the time the call-in show rolled around, he had made great progress and was able to go. So you certainly hope that, because, look, the reality is for an offensive line that has certainly had some struggles, you're trying to find the right combination of guys. You're down the guy that's been, when he's been in, your most consistent, in my opinion, guy in Casey Henry if he can't go. But then another guy that the staff deemed, hey, we're going to give this guy a shot to start. He obviously earned that opportunity, and Nolan Hay missed last game. He may not be able to go either. And then you've got Anderson, who has been someone who has played special teams and has also played a role in actually getting some snaps. We saw that against Kentucky. That was the most rotation that we've seen on the offensive line. So how does this, change the trajectory or change the plan, the equation for South Carolina? We'll have to see, you would imagine, if this ends up holding, right? It's an if Casey Henry or Nolan Hay, if they're limited, if they can't go at all, you would have to think that, Tree Babalade factors in. But beyond that, does South Carolina pull the trigger on playing Jatavius Shivers more like we saw in the second half of the Kentucky game last week? I think that's quite possible. And then you go to defensive back guys and defense in general. Pikes has been a guy who's really been that fourth defensive tackle this year as a transfer. You know, we've seen the top two, Barrett and Goodwine. Then we've seen Gabe Brownlow-Dendy has played, I think, the third most snaps. He's almost been a co-starter. But Pikes has kind of quietly been an important player for them this flashed. Norwood has played a lot. Collier's obviously a starter in the secondary and corner when he's been in there. You'd really like to have as many of those guys back, and not just back, but able to effectively play as you can going into this one.
Well, and talking about Judge Collier here specifically, and again, it looked like things were turning in the right direction going into the bye week, and he was available for Kentucky, and, has been limited for precautionary reasons, obviously, but you felt like he should have been a full go for this upcoming weekend. When you look at what you're going up against with this receiving core for LSU with Aaron Anderson, who is also listed on their depth chart as questionable right now, that certainly can improve. Barian Brown and Xavion Thomas, three very capable wide receivers. You're going to need all hands on deck in your secondary to slow those guys down, not to mention Bauer Sharp, Trey'Dez Green, they're two tight ends that are also very capable and very dangerous as well. And Brandon Cisse has done a really good job on one side of the field and is actually, look at his numbers, one of the best corners in all the SEC when it comes to coverage and that kind of stuff. And Judge Collier is certainly capable of doing that kind of stuff on the other side. And when you also factor in the fact that Miles Norwood's also on this report as well, you don't really know what's going to be happening at that other cornerback spot if those two guys aren't going to be available to go. But you'd feel a whole lot better if you knew Judge Collier was going to be out there this weekend, given what you're going up against in the passing game.
Yeah, and I think that was a spot where we kind of thought you were going to be getting healthy, and frankly, we're going to have some decisions to make. Obviously, if those guys are banged up or just can't go, you'd think it's going to be Cisse and Vakari Smith, as Brian Kelly calls him. But from there on, that does eat into your depth a little bit. If both those guys can't go, you're talking about DeMarcus Leach probably being in there at corner. You're talking about, I got to admit, I still want to see, pure curiosity, I want to see Jalewis Solomon get in there. This is a highly, highly recruited guy that you beat out Auburn for. And, it is incredibly, if you watch on the sideline, Jalewis Solomon, incredibly active and cheering on his teammates, is engaged in the game, is involved in the game. He's someone, if you talk about people that you're intrigued to maybe see more of in the second half, would love to see more of him. But certainly you want your guys who have gone and played. You want your guys you've been counting on. And again, not to repeat myself, but you really thought, and maybe he still is, you really thought Collier was on the back end. How did Kelly say it, talking about Nussmeier? He's on the back end of his recovery from, what was an injury. You really thought that Collier was on the back end of this thing. So I even thought you might be so healthy at corner that you had to once again have the conversation of, can you find a way to get all these guys on the field at one time? Do we see Jalen Kilgore at safety a little bit? Was Cisse as good as he's been, playing some nickel? What tweaks do we see coming out of the bye just in general? Some of it may be required tweaks because of injuries. Some of it may be, well, you're trying to just try some different things to get some more guys involved. Tyler, I made the point, though, on Gamecock Central that I didn't feel like South Carolina waited to the bye to make tweaks. It feels like we have already seen them tinkering, trying to change some things. We've already seen some of the wide receivers play more than they did early in the year. We've seen, obviously, Matt Fuller start to get his chance at running back. It doesn't feel like they say, we're going to wait till the bye to start making changes.
Right.
Yeah, it does. And, the interesting thing is, Wes, to your point, they made some of those changes, and they did, although, look, were there ugly parts of the Kentucky game? Yeah, defensively, the first two drives, giving up touchdown immediately, 10 points, running the football, ugly at times. But overall, who could argue that was South Carolina's best game overall, right? Because even in the context of their offense, they scored some points. Wasn't pretty running the ball, but it was more of a vintage Lenora Sellers performance. You did have, and Mike Shula pointed this out yesterday, yeah, there were a lot of tough, ugly, grinded-out type of runs, but Matt Fuller was a featured part of that, 9.5-minute, 16-play drive where South Carolina runs it 15 or 16 times on that drive. When Kentucky knows you're going to run it, there's something to be said for that. And so some of the tweaks, you're right, I think have gone in. Some of them that you might have gone into this bye week thinking about, maybe you're not able to deploy those. I mean, obviously, South Carolina's offensive staff wants Casey Henry back. You would like to have Nolan Hay back if you can, because that gives you an option of, if you think he's the best option at center, then you go ahead and play him at center. Or if somebody's not performing in the game and you feel like you need to make an in-game tweak, which again we saw that last time against Kentucky. Now you may not have that option if he can't go. So it's not like Game 1 was the exact same as Game 5. I think you're right, Les. We already have seen some things that the staff is shaken up some, and it'll be interesting to see if there's anything else, that they try to change up, as long as their personnel allows them to do it going into this game.
On the other side of things with LSU, I mentioned Aaron Anderson, one of the wide receivers being listed as questionable right now. Caden Durbin, the running backs listed as probable, as he's been banged up throughout the start of this year. And then their starting left guard, and Paul Mabenga, is listed as doubtful as of right now. He's somebody that's been dealing with the high ankle sprain and has struggled at times this year. One person not on their injury report is their starting right tackle in Weston Davis, who's a redshirt freshman that's probably been their worst offensive lineman overall so far this year. Brian Kelly did say he was going to be good to go this weekend and will start. It is worth noting in their last game against Ole Miss, they started a true freshman in Carius Kern that did actually play pretty well. So it's going to be interesting to see, because that's going to be who's blocking Dylan Stewart on Saturday, how long of a leash they give Weston Davis, and if they decide to make a change mid-game if he's out there struggling.
Yeah, that freshman, I think they're very high on him as someone who's got a bright future there. Of course, we've seen it with South Carolina. You plug a freshman into that spot. Saw it last year. You're going to win some battles. You're going to lose some. And sometimes it's not going to always be pretty. I think that's an area South Carolina has to try to exploit. That was one of the talking points on the broadcast for the LSU Ole Miss game was, hey, they kind of framed it up, I think, like, hey, Ole Miss has had some struggles interior at guard on the offensive line, and LSU has had some struggles at tackle. And so can you take advantage of that as South Carolina? I think, as we know, you have the horses, you have the pieces at defensive end / edge, whatever you want to call it, to take advantage of that weakness if you can get yourself into the game flow opportunities in order to do so. This is something Chris and I talked about on our podcast we recorded this morning. It'll be live this afternoon. The ability to go rush the passer, we always talk about it. You have to stop the run first. Well, you're talking about an LSU offense that has struggled to run the ball. You're talking about a South Carolina offense that has struggled to run the ball. So which of these sides, which running game, which rushing attack can take a little bit of pressure off of their quarterback and let the guy just go make plays, go be himself without maybe having to press and push a little bit extra?
Yeah, plenty of storylines to watch for this game coming up on Saturday night. Of course, as we do on Thursdays, we take a look back at what happened the last two times these two teams played. Obviously, a lot of controversy in Williams-Brice Stadium, which we'll unpack again coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday here on the game.
Let's get a turnover, guys. Get a turnover.
Taylor goes left side. Snap it back. Here comes Carolina. Nussmeier, quick throw. The coverage is picked off. E-man worried on the near sideline. Got some blockers. There's the speed. 40, 50 flag on the play. 30, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Carolina. Hold on, though. 5 flags thrown back at the line of scrimmage.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on your Thursday. And yes, that was the moment last year, about 6 minutes to go, when we thought Nicky Minwardi had a pick six that would have put South Carolina up by 2 scores and maybe put the game out of reach for LSU at that point in time. Unfortunately, of course, Kyle Kennard called for unnecessary roughness on Garrett Nussmeier that negated the touchdown, still got the interception, but did not allow South Carolina to pull away in the way that we thought they would. Of course, Carolina would go on to lose that game 36-33. And that moment, guys, is the one that's always going to be remembered, and that's obviously going to be forever a tough loss to swallow, considering the fact that winning that game could have gotten you in to the college football playoff. But there's so many layers to this game in terms of what happened. The 17-0 lead, obviously losing Lenore Sellers before halftime, Robbie Ashford playing in the second half, the near pick six. Despite all that, the 13 penalties, you were still in position to tie the game and send it overtime. Unfortunately, the kick did not go through the uprights, and you came up short. But a wild game that's going to be remembered for a lot of reasons.
And a kick that I think something that's never talked about, missed by a matter of feet. Like, I mean, I don't know about y'all's view as it was traveling. The whole time I was going, maybe not. Like, you know when you the experience of watching a kick.
Sure.
And kind of is that true? Is it going through? Is it not? I really the whole way was like, maybe not. And then it just barely misses, which I, in a weird way, was like just fitting for that game, that it just ended up being painstakingly close for South Carolina. And, you know, man, as much as that penalty gets talked about, I thought there were other calls in this game that were even worse. I still, to this day, there's somebody who posted, it was floating around earlier this week, the PI, offensive PI that was called on Mazio Bennett.
Yep.
I still, like, I've actually tried to track down various views of that play. I've gotten the all 22 to just try to have a feel for what they saw. And yet the two guys sort of like collided a little bit. The ball is not even thrown to Mazio. I've had people respond and say, oh, no, they were calling it on Nick Harbor. They were not.
Yeah.
And I've asked, like, I don't think it was a mistaken number situation. And Harbor's on the other side. The ball's not thrown his way, and he had stopped contact before the ball was thrown. So they're near the line of scrimmage. That's irrelevant, what's going on with Harbor on the completely other side of the play. So this was, I mean, it's got to be, if you were there, man, it's probably one of the most memorable games for various reasons you've ever seen at Williams-Brice Stadium. And obviously just came up on the wrong end for South Carolina.
Yeah, they were, I think, listening back to that call that you played, Tyler, I'd forgotten that not one, but 5 flags came out. And, you know, you don't see that a ton. It's like not 5 officials saw that play. That almost kind of just summed it up for me. It was such an embarrassingly bad officiating performance. And look, let's go ahead and say this too. This is what Shane Beamer says all the time. Yeah, there were bad calls in that game. He said it yesterday in his presser. Some of those, or Tuesday, some of those penalties that we had in the game were not penalties, right? Like that's true. Now, could South Carolina, should they still have won? Yeah, I think so. And so there were things on both sides, but it just goes back to the point of how horrible that crew was that worked. And I'm not trying, it's not a personal attack. It was just so bad. Then the following week, you know, they have the SEC officiating, the NCAA puts out their ill-fated highlight tape of the good calls that they made across college football and decided to feature that game. Just a complete PR disaster. But we saw, you know, just so many controversial calls, right? Like, I actually thought that they got the horse collar on the OD Fortune pick that was wiped out. I actually thought that was, by the letter of the law, the correct call.
Yeah.
But you had the PI You had the unnecessary roughness. You had, the Mo Brown block punt. That was a call that LSU felt like they got hosed on. And, they had to come out with a clarification of, hey, we're going to start calling this thing differently. So, I don't know. Hopefully we won't see a game ever like that again. We've seen some poorly officiated games since then, but hopefully it's not ever that bad again. Point is, guys, and Shane Beamer has talked about this a lot since then, let's not leave it in the hands of judgment calls from the officiating crew. Let's go out and play our game and try to win, because we still have plenty of opportunities in that game last year as well.
Well, we talked about this last month, too. Didn't get talked about much, the call on the sideline where they reversed the non-catch on LSU's game-winning drive. I mean, that was kind of controversial as well. But to Beamer's point, I mean, you do just have to clean some of that up if you're South Carolina. Like, some of the calls were controversial. Some of them were not. Like, if you put yourself kind of on that line between could this be a penalty, could this not be a penalty, you open yourself up to those things happening. And you don't – it's kind of like when a guy takes strike 3 and it's close and maybe it is like a ball's width off the plate. But what have you been taught your entire life? Like, hey, it's too close to take. If you put it in the hands of the officials and make it close, then you're going to have these 50-50 judgment calls, and some of them are just going to go against you, unfortunately.
Yeah, and again, given what the rest of the season ended up being, I think that one's going to burn for a long time in terms of what that loss meant. And I know Beamer said, hey, they're not talking about it, but everybody's well aware of what happened a year ago, and that adds more significance to this game by going in there and essentially trying to get your lick back and take a team in LSU that's already feeling pretty down on themselves right now and make them feel even worse. It doesn't necessarily put you back in the college football playoff a year ago, but have feel a little bit better about a game that you felt really slipped between your fingers, last year.
Yeah, and I think so. Beamer has not gone the route of like making this the Super Bowl get back game from last year, which I think is smart. There's enough riding on this game anyway. To you don't really need to go out and create these other they're almost distractions at some point.
Yeah,
I remember, there was a game when South Carolina. It was actually after South Carolina had the big upset win over Georgia in Athens. Very next week, they played Florida at home. They were in position to win that game, and there were some controversial calls in that one. And the very next week, they went to Tennessee, and it felt like even leading up to the Thursday call-in show, all anybody was talking about was how bad the officiating was the week before. And it really felt to me like South Carolina was distracted going into that game. They did not play well at Tennessee, and they got beat. And obviously this is a different scenario. You're talking about a game that was over a year ago. But to me, you probably don't gain much of anything at all if you're Shane Beamer, like harping on, hey, we got to get them back for last year.
Right.
Lots of new players anyway. The guys who were here, they remember it. They know what it felt like. I think if anything, you know what I would lean on? Yeah, they got you a 10-point underdog in this game.
Mm-hmm.
You can play with this squad. Like, you really can. Like, this is not going to, Saban-era Alabama. Like, you're going to have to play your A-plus game, and they're going to have to turn the ball over 4 times for you to have a chance.
Right.
If you can just go play your game, then you are going to have a real opportunity to go win this thing.
Yeah, and we'll get some more insight from Hunt Palmer of ESPN Baton Rouge coming up on the other side. And, Chris, we'll get you back in here tomorrow and get your final thoughts ahead of this one.
All right, fellas. Enjoy it.
Again, Hunt Palmer coming up next as we get some insight from the LSU perspective as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Thursday on the game. All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday on the game, getting you set for the Gamecocks to go on the road, take on the number 11 LSU Tigers coming up Saturday night in Death Valley down there in Baton Rouge. Getting some insight from the Tiger side of things. Joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines from ESPN Baton Rouge is Hunt Palmer. Hunt, first of all, appreciate you taking your time. Wes, he just told me he was in the middle of grinding the SC tape as we speak. So, Hunt, what's standing out to you about SC from what you've seen so far?
I don't think Kentucky's quarterback's going to win the Heisman. Based on early returns, I wouldn't bet on him making a trip to New York. But yeah, Nora Sellers, very athletic as well. There's plenty to talk about, so let's do it.
Absolutely. I wanted to start off with this, and we touched on this a little bit earlier on in the hour. You know, LSU is 4-1 in the season, ranked number 11. All the goals still ahead of them, but you know, when you read what some of your insiders are writing about, when you look at the message boards, you would think this was a program that was in a much worse place. For somebody that covers them and talks about them every single day, what has the season kind of been like from an expectation standpoint and where you sit right now 5 games into the year?
Well, that probably goes back to the spring and then back to August when you look at this roster and you realize the financial commitment that LSU and its boosters made in the transfer portal to add to a roster that returned a fifth-year quarterback who threw for 4,000 yards, which is the second highest total in the history of the school. It was a fever pitch around here in August in terms of the expectation. And you go on the road into a madhouse at Clemson and you beat a top 5 team on the road, and all of a sudden you feel like, okay, this team has got what it takes to compete for a national championship. And so that's the curve that you are graded on when that's the start. Well, now we look back and Clemson's not very good, and LSU's offense has looked pathetic, even though they have gotten off to a reasonable start to the season, only losing 1 game. You beat Clemson in Florida basically with no offense, and that's a concern. And it reared its ugly head against Ole Miss when the offense was pretty feckless, and Ole Miss with a backup quarterback who is probably better than their original starter, beat you pretty badly, which wasn't indicated on the scoreboard. So things are a little tense here in Baton Rouge. If you could beat South Carolina at home and then go to Nashville and beat Vanderbilt, I think things would calm down and set up a monster showdown at home at night with Texas A&M. But everybody right now, because you're grading on a championship-level curve, that's the expectation, realizes right now the offense doesn't look anywhere close to that. The defense does, but the offense does not, and that gives people a lot of pause.
Hey, Hunt, appreciate you making the time today. What can you tell us just about what you have seen from Nussmeier? I know watching from afar just does not seem like the downfield passing game has been there. Is that all just, in your opinion, because of the health? Have there been other issues, you know, among the offense and other players that have also contributed to that? And how much are you buying the idea that he will be back to, you know, 100%, close to 100%, and sort of back to himself coming out of this bye week?
I think it's a two-sided discussion. I think there's a Garrett Nussmeier piece, and then there's an LSU passing game and offense piece. As far as Nussmeier goes, the guy we saw last year was working without a running game, was working without, you know, an elite-level receiving core like you can have here in Baton Rouge, and still, as I mentioned, threw for over 4,000 yards and really carried the offense. And he made some bad throws and made some bad interceptions that cost him in College Station and against Alabama, but he was impressive last year for the most part. And so you bring that into his next season, and a lot of people are thinking, well, in Burrow's 5th year after he started for 1 year, he won the Heisman. And in Daniel's 5th year after starting at LSU for 1 year, he won the Heisman. And, like, this guy had a better junior year than both those guys. Like, what could come here? And I thought that was unfair, but that's the talking point around here. And we went out to practice the last week in August, and he did not throw. And Brian Kelly said, yeah, pitch count, we don't want to overextend him, and just kind of rest in his arms like a pitcher. And I've been to LSU practice for 15 years. I've never seen a quarterback go through practice and not throw the ball. And then we find out that he's got a, quote, a torso injury. And then we hear ab strain. And you realize that LSU is keeping the throwing very much around the line of scrimmage. They're not pushing the ball down the field. They've had 2 instances, one on the first drive against Louisiana Tech and one in the second half against Ole Miss, where one of their receivers, Barryon Brown against Tech and Chris Hilton against Ole Miss, beat the defense by 5 yards. I mean, gone. And Nussmeier came up not like a little bit under there. He missed the throw by 15 yards. And that just leads me to connect enough dots to go, this guy's hurt. He just can't make the throws he is used to making. And so that, to me, seems like a reasonable conclusion to draw. I cannot speak to what he'll look like on Saturday after a week off. I know he did not throw at practice last week. He was doing a bunch of virtual reality stuff and didn't throw the ball. But I think he is hurt, and I think that has limited LSU from an offensive perspective. I do not believe in any way that has hampered their ability to run the ball, and they just cannot flat run it on anybody. They did not run it on Southeastern Louisiana. They did not run it on Louisiana Tech, and they faced Ole Miss last week, who is the worst run defense in the SEC, and they could not run it on Ole Miss. So everything's being now heaped on Nussmeier, and he's trying to bite through an injury, and you just see an offense that is not doing much of anything. And that, to me, is the biggest question with this team. I don't know how much better the running game can get. They have not run the ball as a program for 3 years. I don't expect that to change moving forward. I do think there's a reasonable expectation that the passing game, should Nussmeier get a little healthier, can get back to what it was last year when he completed more passes than anybody in the SEC, and they were the best third down team in the country because he was so good on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. That I think can come back if he's healthier. But as far as his health, I just can't speak to it because I don't know.
Again, talking to Hunt Palmer of ESPN Baton Rouge here in the AAA Union, our phone lines. And you mentioned him not doing any throwing last week on the bye. That allowed Michael Van Buren Jr., the backup quarterback, to work with the ones, something Brian Kelly talked about earlier on this week. And he offers a little bit of a different skill set, did a lot of scrambling last year when he was starting at Mississippi State. And, not that anybody thinks he's going to come in and be the starter this weekend, but a lot of rumblings that he could play some kind of factor in the offense to maybe give a little bit different look and maybe kind of change something up, if not spark the run game for LSU. What are your thoughts and what are you hearing on Michael Van Buren going into this game?
He's certainly a different skill set. He's more athletic. He's not a dynamo running ball. He's not Lenore Sellers, but he's more athletic than Nussmeier. And I just don't think you're going to see him unless Nussmeier's hurt. Brian Kelly was asked about that in red zone, in short yardage, hey, bring in Van Buren for a package. And he said, no, I'm not taking Nussmeier off the field. So I don't think you're going to see that. I don't think it would be a bad idea, but I don't think you're going to see it. There's a possibility, though, that if Nussmeier stays on the field, maybe runs out into motion and you can wildcat it, LSU's running back, he's now a running back, Juwan Johnson. He has played safety at LSU. He's played quarterback at LSU, and he's played running back at LSU. He is the all-time leader in Louisiana high school history in total offense and touchdowns scored. He was a quarterback there, but he's playing running back for LSU right now. He's a freak of an athlete, and he can go back there and give you a little bit of a wildcat read option look with maybe Nussmeier on the field as a bit of deception. That's something we saw in the spring. We have not seen it through a month of regular season, but I think if LSU's going to go to something like that to maybe spark the run game, I don't know if it's Van Buren. I think it's probably Juwan Johnson, but that's just speculation on my part.
Hunt, what are your keys to a win for either side in this game, and kind of just what are your expectations for how this thing may play out?
Yeah, I think the pass rush for South Carolina, especially with Stewart on the edge, is really important in this game. I thought LSU with Emory Jones and Will Campbell last year could hold its own with that ferocious Carolina pass rush that included Kennard that doesn't anymore. But LSU doesn't have those two tackles anymore. They're in the NFL, and they're weaker at tackle. And if South Carolina can get some pressure on Garrett Nussmeier and limit that passing game, I think that's trouble for LSU's offense. That's a big, big key for me. And I think on the other side, I don't anticipate South Carolina methodically moving the ball on this LSU defense, which is really, really, really good. They gave up 24 points last week to Ole Miss. They were out on the field for more than 80 plays, which is just a death sentence on the road against Lane Kiffin. That's a really good defense. What I do think Carolina can do, and I've seen them do it with Norris Sellers against LSU last year and a little bit earlier this year, the big play, especially to Nick Harbor, getting the ball vertical and hitting that 65, 70-yarder. That's easy offense for an offense that's been okay at doing that. So to me, I think the South Carolina pass rush, if LSU can neutralize that, I think Nussmeier will complete some passes. And again, I don't think South Carolina will consistently drive the ball in Tiger Stadium against an LSU defense. But if you get a safety or a corner with eyes in the backfield on Sellers and a play breaks down and then he flips it down the field 65 yards, that's where I think South Carolina can come with some offense. And I don't think either team scores 30 points in this game. That's just LSU 2 years ago, whether you liked it or not, you were getting in a shootout with Jaden Daniels and the worst defense that's ever played at LSU. It was going to be up and down the field no matter what. LSU's the opposite this year. They're great on defense, and they're not going to score a lot of points. So it's kind of been a race to 24 for every game that LSU's played in, and I think that's probably more the same on Saturday night.
Hunt, about 60 seconds here. We were reviewing last year's game and the controversy and wild back and forth that it was here in Columbia. What was the significance of that game to LSU, and any talking points coming away from that one going into this year's matchup?
Caden Durham, I wouldn't have expected him that morning to get 10 carries in that game, and he really broke out. He broke 8 tackles in that game and became LSU's first team back that day. He probably comes back on Saturday, though he's questionable right now. I think he plays, so that was something from last year. And then Nussmeier showed some guts, down 17-0 in that game, to make some really big throws, and those throws just haven't shown up this year. We'll see if they can do that coming up on Saturday night in Death Valley.
He is Hunt Palmer from ESPN Baton Rouge. We appreciate your time, man. I'll hop on with you guys later on this afternoon.
Looking very much forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Again, Hunt Palmer there from ESPN Baton Rouge. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, and talk a little bit about what we just learned there from LSU as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, rolls along here on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. And again, appreciate Hunt Palmer there from ESPN Baton Rouge for joining us and giving us a little bit more perspective from the LSU side of things. And, you know, you're the one that used the analogy yesterday that these two teams are very much like the Spider-Man meme, pointing at each other when it comes to similarities of things they're struggling with, particularly on offense. But as, you know, Palmer alluded to there, as well, you know, the expectations coming into the season for LSU are very high, and for South Carolina are very high, and for both teams through 5 games, it's not been what you wanted. Now, again, LSU's in a much better place than Carolina, only 1 loss by 5 points to a very good Ole Miss team, and still ranked number 11 in the country. Carolina's got to dig themselves out a little bit more of a hole, but both programs trying to certainly right the ship to some degree coming up on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think it is just such an important game for both teams. One, for South Carolina, we've all talked about the 5-game stretch here. You've seen kind of the national guys start to take notice of how just daunting this stretch is. And
a lot of bets being placed if Carolina can go 5-0, by the way.
A lot of them involve funneling of a certain type.
Yeah, be careful.
What was the one last year? Was it a Florida State fan?
It was the Florida State fan.
Didn't they delete themselves off of Twitter?
Oh, I think they deleted everything because after they had lost to Georgia Tech, their next game was Boston College. And like, well, if we lose Boston College, I'll eat dog poop, essentially. They lost to Boston College, and the dude never ate the dog poop. And that is the reason why many people believe Florida State was cursed last year. So be careful when you throw those things out there.
And now I feel like it's kind of a meme, like, what's the most ridiculous thing I can, like, because of that guy, what's the most ridiculous thing I can say I'll do? Yeah, don't mess with the football gods, man.
Hey, screenshots live forever, by the way.
Yes, they do. They'll find you, too. They'll find you. I think, here's the thing. Both teams need this just for different reasons. And if you could start this 5-game stretch to just get back on track and build some confidence, and guess what? You come back to Willie B next week. I know that's going to be a early game, but I mean, we saw it last year in this very game against LSU. Gamecock fans will show up for a noon kickoff too.
Sure,
they'll create an atmosphere, and if you're coming off of a win and facing, you know, Oklahoma in that game, it's just such a different vibe everywhere here, and the fans, rightfully so, they've been just disappointed overall with the level of play. LSU fans have been disappointed overall with the level of play. I think for LSU, it's a little bit like this game is so important because they had true national championship aspirations for this year. And if you lose this game, you're looking ahead at the other games and you're just going, it's probably not going to happen. And then I think the seat, fair or not, you kind of get one of those if not now win situations when you're like, well, look what LSU spent in the portal. Hunt alluded to that. You got your quarterback to come back when really, frankly, he could have gone and been picked very, very high.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all this improvement on defense. I mean, you basically wasted the Jaden Daniels era because you couldn't stop anybody on defense. So you fix that. And you're going for a moving target in college football these days. You fix one part, but then you lose this guy. They were able to get their quarterback back while fixing the defense. Got to be beyond frustrating. So point being, the cause for Brian Kelly to not be there anymore will really pick up if they lose this game.
And I thought he made a really good point. It shows you how, you know, blessed LSU's been at quarterback, certainly his last couple years, when you say, okay, well, Joe Burrow took this big step forward in his second full year as a starter, won the Heisman Trophy, then won the national championship. Jaden Daniels took a big step forward in his second year and won the Heisman Trophy, and if their defense had been anything worth their weight, then they could have maybe won the national championship. So naturally you think, okay, well, here comes Garrett Nussmeier coming along with what we think is going to be a better defense. No reason to think that he's not going to be in the Heisman Trophy conversation, and this team's going to have a shot at a national championship. And again, all those goals still ahead of them as of right now, but it shows more emphasis on why they're so frustrated and disappointed with the way that Nussmeier has been playing due to his injury, obviously, but nevertheless, it's not what they expected.
It is not. And I mentioned it earlier, man. They talked about it on the documentary. Like, hey, we get Nuss back. It's a national title or bust year. Just The other part, man, is they just have not played like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you had just played well and you lost to Ole Miss, but you won all the other games and you were just going, man, that's a tough road trip. Ole Miss is really good, which they are. It's maybe different, but it's just not looked right, I think. And the lack of running game still, the lack of downfield passing game, it just has not been what they wanted, what they expected this year. So I think, I keep repeating myself, but both sides need this one, man. And both sides, can they turn their season around completely by winning this game? No, because you have to keep going from there. But how different does either fan base wake up on Sunday morning with a win versus what the conversation will be for the alternative? And I think here's the thing. South Carolina, if you win this game, like, that is a marquee win for you. You go to LSU and still a win.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that is something. LSU, you almost, because you are so favored in this game, it's more of like a relief. Like, okay, we avoided losing this game. Whereas for South Carolina, it's more like, hey, you got to go take this thing. But if you do it, it's going to be one of the top few storylines in college football for this weekend around the nation.
We'll have our final thoughts tomorrow. Also, do buy or sell as we head into the weekend, and hope Carolina can pick up a much-needed victory this weekend in Baton Rouge. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with myself and Bill Gunner up next as your Thursday rolls along here on The Game.